I think that our biggest challenge and success are probably the same thing, and that is security. For example, in the state of Utah right now, we average about 50 million attacks on our network every day. And during this last summer, there was a couple of days where we had over 300 million attacks in a single day. So that's why it's our biggest challenge, the number of attempts, those entities trying to get into our network. And I think it's our biggest success because of the amount of improvement we have made in the last year or two. We have a great security team. We're not where we need to be, but it's like Craig Orgeron said when he testified to Congress last year. The hackers only need to be right once, and we need to be right every time. So we have a great security team put together in the state of Utah, and we've made great improvements in the area of cybersecurity. Are we where we need to be? No, and we probably never will be, but I still believe it's one of our greatest successes. It's a good question, and I think we can do more in the state of Utah. There's a few things that we have done with some of the smaller local entities. We've helped them with hosting and networking and phone support, for example. But there's a lot more that we can do. One success that we've had is in an application, an enterprise application that we work together with the local entities to develop. So a new employer comes in and they need to register with the tax commission in the state of Utah, with the unemployment division, with the labor division, etc. They also need to get a license for this in the city that they're doing business in. So before this application that we wrote, they would have to go to all these different entities independently and register. So we have a one-stop registration that the employer can go to, and when they enter their data, this data then is shipped out to the tax commission, unemployment division, labor division, and to the corresponding city for registration. So that's an example where we've used an enterprise application to bring the local entities and the state entities together. And I believe there's a lot more that we could do along those lines. I've spent the majority of my 35 years in technology and application development, so I'd have to believe that application development is the thing I'm most passionate about. When I was a project manager or a application development manager, at the beginning of the project, I always felt that we wanted to design and develop and deploy the best application of its kind or system of its kind in the entire nation, and that anything less was unacceptable. So we're working with our agency partners and the IT directors that work with these agencies to improve the processes and procedures that we have. Certainly, when you develop a new application, deploy a new application, being on time and on budget are important. But more importantly is helping the agency understand where they can leverage technology or how they can leverage technology to improve the services that they provide, to become more efficient, to save the state money. And so we're trying to work with the agencies in developing better processes and procedures. We've got a success framework project that we're working on right now with the Governor's Office of Management and Budget to improve these processes, to help the agencies be more engaged, to have the business owners engaged from the beginning to end, and not use technology for technology's sake, but use technology to improve and become more efficient. One thing that we've been working on in the state of Utah in the last couple of years is VDI, so virtual desktops. It's kind of a pilot that we've had. We have about 2,000 of these devices installed right now. We have about 23,000 desktops. In the end, our goal would be to replace 80% or so of these 23,000 desktops with virtual desktops, thin clients. And if we do that, and we're successful with that, we're going to save the state millions of dollars in paying for the devices, but also in supporting and maintaining these devices. That's one thing on the infrastructure side that we're doing that's a big project and will help save the state money and help us become more secure, quite honestly. On the application side, we have a huge MMIS project for Medicaid. We're about a year into this. We're working with a systems integrator, and we'll be deploying here in the next couple of years a new Medicaid project. So that's the biggest project. That's a $100 million plus project that we're working on right now. Some of the individual agencies have done a good job of developing a data warehouse that they've used. For example, the Department of Workforce Services in the state of Utah started doing a data warehouse 10 or 15 years ago. And they take the data that they own. So food stamp data, Medicaid data, unemployment insurance data, employment data, and they've put this into this data warehouse. And they use this data warehouse for a variety of things. One thing is reporting, but more importantly is they've used it for fraud prevention and fraud detection. So they've done a good job of utilizing the data that they own. But what they don't have access to is data that they do not own. So it'd be great if they could have public safety data, driver's license data, motor vehicle data. If they had this data, they could even do a better job of fraud prevention going forward. Now, I'm a big believer that any state, the state of Utah also, has a lot of data, a lot of very valuable data from things like hunting licenses, fishing licenses, tax commission data, labor data, employer data, a lot of data about people. And if we aggregated this data and used this data, if the agencies could catch the vision of using this data, we could do a better job of making data-driven decisions. So in the state of Utah right now, I'm working with a small committee that we've put together to generate a business case to help the agencies understand how they can use this data. We've got to convince the agencies to share this data with each other, number one. We've got to get the Governor's Office of Management and Budget convinced that doing a project like this would be a risk worth taking. It's going to cost some money. It's not cheap and it's not easy. And it's not easy to find the right people. In articles that I've read recently indicated that there's a 1.5 million person shortage of talented people in the area of big data, people who are statisticians, data scientists, those kind of people who know how to utilize this data. So it's not going to be cheap, but we believe that in the end it will be worth it. So we're in the beginning stages of learning how to use big data and to promote it and to get the funding so that we can go forward with it. The state of Utah has a very good transparency website at transparent.utah.gov, and this website allows the public to come in and see any financial transactions that the state has made, anything from how much any individual's paid to how much the Department of Health is paying on toner. All that information is available. And it's not just with the state. All the local entities in the state are required, cities and counties and special districts. Anybody who gets any government funding is required to put this data online. So a user can come in and say, hey, I want to know how much they spent on printers in Sanpete County. So they could go in and they could access this data. They could say, okay, I want to know how much Joe Jones made last year. You could go in and access that information. So we're really good with the financial information. Now we want to take it to the next step. This last year in the state of Utah, Senate Bill 70 passed, and this helps us get to the next step. So what we want to do is take all this open data, and we have a lot of it. The individual state agencies have a lot of data that's considered open data and should be accessible to the public. And for the most part, it is, but it's hard to find because there's 500 different websites, and so how do you find all the data? Also, the other problem is that once you find it, it's typically only in a PDF format. So you can download it and you can have a printout. But what we want to do is, with our new website for open.utah.gov, is a person can come in and say, hey, I want to find data about corporations, or I want to find data about motor vehicles. And it'll be listed in a single place. And it will also be able to produce this data in an open format. So for example, if a person comes in and they say, hey, I want to get a list of all the corporations that have registered in the state of Utah in the last year that are in general contracting. They could go in to this website and they could say, okay, I want corporate data. And I could filter out the data to get what I want. Let's say I wanted the name and address of the registered agent of that corporation. And then I could say, okay, I want just corporations that are involved in general contracting. I could ask for that. Then I could choose from 8 to 10 different open formats. Let's say an XLS format for a spreadsheet. Click on that, and then within seconds it downloads this data to the spreadsheet and makes it available to them. We believe there's a huge benefit in doing this. It provides this data to the private sector. In the end, this can help the state because these private sector entities will write applications using this data. And it already has happened to some extent in the state of Utah. Weber State University, some students at Weber State University took environmental data and wrote a mobile application that is now usable that shows you the air quality for that day and then forecasts what it's going to be for the next few days. So that's an example of how it can be used, and we believe that it will be used a lot in that way. So we're really excited. We've got some funding from Senate Bill 70, so we're excited about where we're going to go with open data in the future.